Avery sat in the corner of the corporate lobby, knees bouncing nervously as her baby whimpered against her shoulder. She had triple-checked the address, her resume was slightly bent from the stroller bag, and her blouse, clean just an hour ago, now bore a faint smear of applesauce. The babysitter had cancelled at the last minute. She had tried everything, calling in favors, begging neighbors, but no one could step in. So she came anyway. She had no choice. The receptionist gave a tight smile when Avery walked in with the baby, and the others waiting, sharp suits, leather briefcases, confident postures, glanced her way. Some offered sympathetic nods, most looked away. Avery held her daughter a little tighter and prayed the baby would stay quiet just long enough to get through the interview. But right on cue, a soft whimper turned into a louder fuss. Avery whispered soothing words, bouncing gently on her feet, heart pounding. This wasn't how she imagined it. She stared at the elevator, wondering if she should just leave, save herself the embarrassment. But she couldn't afford to give up. Not now. This interview was her third this month, the only one that had responded to her after weeks of silence. Rent was due in days. Formula wasn't cheap. Then, the receptionist called her name. Avery stood, adjusted her baby on her hip, and took a deep breath. Her resume in one hand, her child in the other, she walked forward. No backup. No plan B. Just hope. Avery stepped into the glass-walled conference room, her heels echoing too loudly on the tile. The baby stirred, shifting in her arms, already sensing the tension in the air. Behind the desk sat Mr. Langford, mid-50s, crisp suit, unreadable expression. His eyes flicked from Avery to the child, then back again. A pause. Not long, but long enough to feel heavy. "Ms. Thomas?" he asked, standing briefly to shake her hand. Avery shifted her baby to one arm and managed a firm grip with the other. "Yes, thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. She sat down, adjusting the carrier beside her, trying to look composed as her daughter let out a soft babble. Mr. Langford glanced at the child again. "Did you not have childcare today?" he asked, not unkindly, but not warmly either. Avery flushed. "No, sir. My sitter cancelled last minute. I understand if this isn't ideal, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity." He nodded slowly, folding his hands. "Let's proceed." The questions came fast. "Tell me about your experience with Excel modeling. How would you handle a sudden change in project scope?" Avery answered as clearly as she could, her brain juggling formulas and timelines while also patting her daughter's back. Then came the sharp cry, loud and sudden. Avery winced, rocked her gently, but the baby wasn't calming. "I'm so sorry," she said, standing. "I can leave, I understand." Mr. Langford raised a hand. "No. Go on. I'm listening." Avery hesitated, unsure if he truly meant it. The baby was still fussing softly, cheeks flushed, her tiny fists curling and uncurling. But Mr. Langford's expression had shifted, less formal now, more human. She sat back down, adjusted the blanket over her daughter's shoulder, and took a breath. "I didn't start in data analytics," she began, her voice quieter now. "I was a retail manager for 5 years. After my husband died last winter, everything changed. I couldn't work nights anymore. I couldn't afford childcare. I needed something I could learn from home, something I could grow into." Mr. Langford's eyes stayed on her, not distracted, not impatient, just listening. "I taught myself SQL and Tableau between midnight bottle feeds. Took online classes when she napped. I built case projects on an old laptop my neighbor gave me. This is the first time I've even made it this far." She paused, looking down at her daughter, who had calmed but still clung to her shirt. "I know I'm not the most polished candidate. But I've never worked harder at anything in my life." The room was silent for a beat. Then, to Avery's astonishment, Mr. Langford leaned forward slightly and said, "May I?" She blinked. "Sorry." He gestured gently to the baby. "May I hold her? Just while you finish. I'd like to hear more without distraction." Avery hesitated, then nodded slowly. She passed her daughter over. The baby settled instantly in his arms. And for the first time, Avery felt seen. With her daughter cradled calmly in Mr. Langford's arms, Avery sat up straighter, her voice growing steadier. The shift in the room was undeniable. The tension had melted into something else, respect, perhaps, or quiet understanding. For once, she wasn't shrinking to fit someone's idea of professional. She was simply herself. She spoke with clarity now, outlining a budget dashboard she'd built from scratch, describing how she found hidden patterns in customer churn data using pivot tables and conditional formatting. Her examples weren't hypothetical, they were pulled from nights spent teaching herself by watching YouTube tutorials on 1.5x speed, coding with one hand while rocking her baby with the other. Mr. Langford nodded occasionally, still gently rocking the child, who now gazed at the overhead lights with wide eyes. "That project," he said, "wasn't part of a job." "No, sir," Avery replied. "Just me trying to prove to myself I could do this. And hoping someone might give me a shot." He glanced down at the baby in his arms, then back at Avery. There was a long pause, measured, meaningful. Then he said, quietly but clearly, "We don't just hire skill here. We hire heart. And I've seen both today." Avery blinked, unsure she'd heard him right. "Welcome to the team," he said, standing slowly and offering her back her daughter with a warm smile. She took her baby, eyes misting, and for the first time in a long while, let herself believe that everything might finally change. 6 months later, the morning sun filtered through the windows of the same building, but everything felt different now. Avery walked through the lobby not as a desperate applicant, but as a data analyst, badge clipped to her blazer, confidence in her stride. Her daughter, now toddling and giggling, reached up to her as they entered the company's on-site daycare. Avery knelt, smoothing her daughter's curls and planting a kiss on her forehead before handing her to the cheerful caregiver inside. She turned and made her way upstairs, passing familiar faces, some of whom had once stared in silent judgment during her interview. Now, they nodded warmly. In the hallway, Mr. Langford stood by the coffee machine, chatting with a colleague. He gave Avery a nod and a knowing smile. "How's our youngest recruit doing today?" he asked with a wink. "She's running the show in daycare," Avery replied with a grin. "They're lucky she hasn't taken over payroll yet." He chuckled, then gestured to his office. "Got another resume on my desk. Single dad. No support system. Think you'd want to sit in on this one?" Avery's smile softened. "Absolutely." As she stepped into the office, she glanced down at her own resume still pinned to the board behind Mr. Langford's desk, a quiet reminder of where it all began. Sometimes, she thought, all someone needs is to be seen, really seen, and given one honest chance. And sometimes, that chance changes everything.